But one of those, again, kind of targeting this at commercial pilots, is if you look at those kind of 7 questions, and that's the advisory circular I bring up all the time, even though we're not always talking about dry lease operations, this might just be a wholly owned aircraft by a business owner, and they're hiring you to fly their airplane. They would still have to answer all of those questions to affirmative to verify that they're actually in operational control. But one of the things I think is interesting is a lot of the duties as pilot in command are enveloped by the duties of the person or entity that's in operational control. So, I think about it in terms of like a Venn diagram. The the big circle is operational control, and then there's a smaller circle of pilot and command responsibilities that kind of sits within the operational control diagram. And sometimes those parties could be the same, right? The person that's in operational
Correct.
control could also be the pilot in command. And that would be kind of what I would call like an owner operator type of flight. And you probably heard that term if you're a pilot, owner operator. So that means they're both the owner, operator, and the pilot in command of that flight. Versus, let's say that they're not the owner, they're leasing that airplane, and so that's where a dry lease comes in. So you mentioned it. I just want to
Correct.
define it just in case somebody doesn't know. But dry lease refers to the presence of crew. So if crew are leased with the airplane, then that would be a wet lease.
True.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but in most cases, in Part 91 flying, in particular, wet leases are something that we just can't do under Part 91. Is that correct?
With the exception of 91.501, there are some arrangements that are pretty tricky and usually not economically viable, but sometimes work, where someone can lease their airplane and provide the crew. And it's a time-sharing arrangement and aircraft interchange, which notably the regulation is silent on whether it's wet or dry. So it doesn't say you can't or can, but it's an interchange. And then there's a joint ownership arrangement structure that also allows for a wet lease. But absent those and a few other exceptions in 91.501K, most of the time, if you provide a crew and an aircraft, it is a 135 flight. And if you do not have a 135 certificate, you are in violation.